Welcome, 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 Cynthia Nolan, the trailblazing, wonderful woman who helps Abby and I admin Mummy Voices, but does so much more than that. And I would love for you to tell us what all that amazing stuff is.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks again for inviting me. I love your formats and your groups and the way you're just doing so much to hold people together. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm a registered psychotherapist. I've been doing that work for about, gosh, it's about 10 years now, maybe a bit more. Yeah, actually it is more. It's more like closer to 15. And I did have another life before that, and that kind of overlapped, which in addition to my master's in counseling psychology, early on in my life, I got a master's in library and information science. So I worked for many years in high-tech settings as a systems librarian and a systems admin and that kind of thing. So right now I'm part-time. I have a part-time practice, love all my clients dearly. And, through the pandemic phase, we've been working remotely, but, it's interesting. For some people, that's a lot more comfortable. And I'm a great introvert, so I have to admit, for me, this has worked out really well. I'm like, my goal in life has always been to be, the village witch. And that means that, I'm in my cozy little cottage and people come to me and bring their problems.
Do you lure people there and then think
and
about killing them?
Yeah, no, I don't want to eat them. I just want to help them. And then I give them their little, package of help. And then they go forward and blossom, right?
I love that.
So this is as close as I think I'm ever going to get to that. So I'm liking it. Unlike you more, the more extroverted types that need a lot of hands-on stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of me where I am right now. Part-time psychotherapist, love it. The rest of my time is spent a lot of it on psychotherapy too, because I love to study and I enjoy researching new topics and things like that. And because I think I was a librarian in a past part of my life, I'm always interested in sort of, pulling together a resource package, as it were, for clients or people I'm working with or whatever. On Mummy Voices, a lot of times I'll pipe up with 7 different links to sources and things like that on a topic. And I just can't help myself with that. But I guess it's just part of my package, So yeah, that's pretty much it. If there's anything else you want to know, just ask.
No, I was just, before we started recording, I was saying how I love all of your incredibly eclectic interests. And so, and I really appreciate how that may overlap with your sort of identity as a librarian, sort of writ large. I covet the library and information sciences, like graduate degree. It's so weird.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, I really should do that. But sorry.
I don't know if it's as good as it used to be. I mean, I don't know if it's as valuable as it used to be because it's changed so much, but I do understand your feelings of the need for it. There is something inside some people where it's just like, I want to be that person who knows where it is all the way down to the bottom, you know.
And I think it's just the way that I love libraries. I love the physical space of libraries. I love, I know it's changing significantly. But it's still really sort of exciting for me, just go in and huff the books.
Oh yes. Oh my God, yes, I know. I'm with you on that.
But I just wanted you to talk about, because you're a true Renaissance woman, I would just love for you to just name some of the things that you are really interested in as the village witch.
Okay, all right, sure, that'll be fun. Okay, well, I'm very interested in parenting because, of course, I've got kids of my own. They're all grown up now, but I did become a parent when I was very young, 19, and of course, you're never really ready at that point, but at least I was somebody who liked to read and research. But and then with my therapy work, I understood even more what things mattered. So parenting is huge for me. and specifically parenting at certain points in the process. So the early years, from kind of, pre-partum to maybe when the child gets to go into school, let's say like 6 or 7. Those are really important years for grounding and foundation. And then the teen years. And then what do you do when the child becomes an adult? And how do you make sure that, while you let well, it's not like we let them, they just do individuate and separate from us. And there's turmoil in there, but it's so important to keep those roads open, between you and your child during those difficult years. And sometimes it's really hard to do that. And often people mistakenly let them grow over. And then once the individuation is complete on the child's side, there's almost no way back, or you end up with a kind of a shell of the connection you used to have. And so I'm studying that lately because my kids are now in that stage, right? They're all adults with their own lives and their own children and everything. So parenting as a topic is really important to me. Sex is a huge thing for me. Again, always has been. And I was raised in a very fundamentalist, conservative environment in small town USA. My father was a Baptist minister. Lots of pressure on behaving in a certain way to make my parents look good. And, lots of questions gone unanswered and considered of the devil and things like that. So sex is really underground in our home, but I mean, it's everywhere. So, you got to have your own thoughts about it. So sex is huge for me. Sex and sexuality and who we are as sexual beings and that kind of thing. I'm also I'm pansexual, I'm queer. I know I don't look like it, but I have several partners and, the kind of life that doesn't look like I don't know. I look like I wear a lot of twin sets. Let's put it that way. I wear a lot of twin sets and chunky necklaces. And so lots of times it seems unusual to people that I have several partners and, get around a bit in the BDSM and queer community. Okay. But again, that's been part of my exploration. And, it's really important to me. And a lot of the clients I work with are, I would say maybe some struggling and some interested in, what's the reality for me about who I am, right? And does it matter who I say? Do I have to pick a side? A lot of things like that. So that's another big one. Of course, the fiber arts are huge for me. I love spinning wool, spinning fiber, and I'd love to weave. I've done freestyle weavings, just on my own, where you hang kind of a shower curtain rod in your doorway and, put your things. And I love working with the different textures and that sort of thing. And recently I've gotten kind of interested in working with other fibers nettle fiber, plant fibers, and flax and things like that. I'm a little bit limited in that because this is another kind of, you could say, interest for me, but I have a couple of chronic conditions that make it difficult for me to do work that requires a lot of work, with my hands and that sort of thing, because I've got really serious arthritis and also fibromyalgia. So that sometimes will kick in and mean I can't do these things for, months on end, right? In those situations, I just kind of pick up my different wools and hold them and, fiddle around with them in my hands, just so at least I can still feel them. I love food in a huge way. I don't know, books, old books. I've got beautiful old books and I'm just kind of obsessive about them. I have a small collection of women's health books from, the 1800s, early 1800s and in through the early 1900s. And I find those fascinating. It's really interesting to see, they always include a section on housekeeping and that sort of thing. They are usually pretty good about the standards of, physical care for your body. But, the euphemisms that are used, the sort of strange way people talk around things for women and the way they deal with sort of the wedding night experience and that kind of thing. Just fascinating. One, I can't remember which one it is offhand, is excellent. I was like, I am so glad that back then, at least somebody was saying the right things and prepping, young women for their lives as women, right? So, and I love going down the rabbit hole. I mean, I'm a librarian, right? I'll go anywhere. People laugh at me sometimes because I'll get interested in something and I'll get very interested in it. And I kind of like just want to absorb it all.
Mhm.
And then after a while, I'm not talking about it much anymore. And people sort of like, well, what about that? You picked that up and now it, like you just dropped it. But I didn't really drop it. I just like I've got it now,
Mhm.
and now it's kind of part of the whole thing, right? I
Mhm.
used to feel very guilty about that and kind of embarrassed that I wasn't like, I don't know, making a profession out of every interest I had. And
Mm.
I know some people are that way, but I just more of a, like I just want a little more of something else now.
I love
So
that.
those are some of the things. Is that good enough?
It's
Okay.
more than good enough. It
Okay.
makes me very happy just to hear you talk about all of those
Okay.
things. One quick question. What is the best euphemism for a vagina that comes out of these books?
Oh my God. Oh, I can't even remember, but it's like it's not the kind of thing you would find in an old romance.
No.
It's not even that good. So it's not, her flower of her petals opened or anything like that. It's more, Jackie, I don't even know. I'll have to, what it is? They talk completely around it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
It's like they talk about the experience, let's say that when they're actually like coming up close to the intercourse part, it just somehow there's like an empty space there. They just don't say,
A
and
black
it's like you're
hole.
supposed to kind of fill in the blanks, so to speak, fill in the gaps.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Um, so I appreciate that. Thank you for indulging
yeah,
me. And so what we were going to talk about today, based on some of your interests, was Winnicott. Is it Winnicott? Am I saying it right?
yeah. Winnicott.
Winnicott.
Hmm.
Um, his notion of the good enough mom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So could you
Well,
talk a little bit about that?
okay, yeah, and we can do this. This is really interesting because this is such a huge thing for moms nowadays.
Mhm.
I'll just preface by saying, and I know you and I have talked about this, and we often touch on it in Mummy Voices, the incredible pressure that moms your age and moms with younger kids have on them to be like absolutely perfect in every possible way,
Mhm.
which is completely unsustainable. But it seems, and I have a lot of young moms as clients, it seems almost impossible to break free from that, and it's really heartbreaking. Moms are, it's, we're working on it, right? I don't know where it started. I have some ideas that maybe, Gen X or Z or millennials or whoever you guys are, were raised to sort of given the idea that you were supposed to be perfect and everything, without anybody meaning to give you that sense. And, maybe that put pressure on you, but I'm researching, but it's horribly destructive. It's painful. And it's such a great, moms lose so much, being caught in that feeling of shame and panic about not being good enough. Right. And especially when we think that Winnicott, for example, this was like in the 50s, the
Mhm.
40s, the 30s, or something like that he was working. And at that point, he was studying moms in their infants to find out, because he was a psychologist or psychiatrist, and he worked with, moms who were having trouble bonding with their children, or children who were having difficulty bonding or whatever. And what he discovered was that the interplay between the mom and the child made a huge difference in how the child perceived the world and perceived themselves. Now, that, of course, is one of those common sense statements. We all know that's true generally. But Winnicott was able to kind of piece it down into something a little bit more specific, which was that we all know that it's important for an infant and a young child to have a sense of safety, because that allows them, I guess we could say in the broadest sense, it frees up, psychological energy to explore and develop in all the ways that they need to.
Mhm.
If they're focused on being afraid a lot, then development is hindered, right? I mean, we find that in our own lives. So we know infants need that, and moms want to give that, it's an instinct we have as a parent, parents do, and moms have it a little bit extra, maybe in some cases. So that seems like it should work really well. But there's all the conflicts around that because moms also have other feelings about their newborns and their small children. They have, and I mean, Winnicott was brave enough to say it, murderous feelings. He used that term in some of his writing. And, that in itself is something that we've all had those moments where we've looked at our child and not wanted to kill them, not really, but you just look at them and you think, what have I done? Like, this is, I want to do over. This is not okay. That in itself makes people so ashamed and guilt-ridden that sometimes that stops it for them right there. They can't think through that and accept themselves having that thought. But I mean, it's totally legit. It's part of that deep connection and the way that bond works. So anyway, Winnicott was looking at this stuff and he realized, the reality of it is moms are trying to sort of do this for their children. And their instinct is to provide them with this constant safety and connection, which of course is impossible. It's unsustainable for them as a separate person because they have their own needs. And it's also not effective for their child because what that does is that keeps their child from developing as well. Because if a mom is constantly, anticipating the need and resolving it, the child never gets to make those decisions about what their needs actually are. The child never learns that a need that's not instantly met can still be met later, or maybe I can meet it myself, So he saw that the most effective relationships between parents and children were with moms and kids, were with moms who what he referred to as good enough. And what he means by that is in the early years, the very early part, when you've got an infant and a very young child, we start out by giving them basically meeting all of their needs for security and survival and everything. You know what that's like, that squalling brand new infant, God forbid, oh my God, but that's the reality, right? Something pushes us to want to keep them alive and keep them safe. That's totally how it's supposed to be at that age. But then as they mature, even to the point where, let's say they're 3 months, 6 months, whatever, they need to understand that, and ideally it just happens sort of gradually and comfortably. Maybe mom isn't there right away when they're hungry. Maybe, they're a little bit in a bit of discomfort after they wake up, or, having a grouchy moment, or their sleeper's itchy, and mom isn't already there taking it off of them and comforting them or whatever it is, and they gradually learn that, it's okay if I have to wait a little bit, or I'll turn and then maybe I'll feel a little better, or, and then this of course goes on as the child gets older in various ways. So that's the base of this whole concept of good enough mother. It's like, give your child the basic needs that they have, meet their needs as an infant, because you have to at a mammal level, at a mammal mother level, you have to do that. You're drawn to, no matter how much you might hate them in the moment. And then, but don't feel that that's what mothering is. This isn't what it's going to be the whole way through. You're not doing you or your child any good to set yourself up for that, And I just want to say, we talk a lot about attachment parenting. Now, it was John Bowlby, who developed that concept, the concept of attachment. And he did that with, I think her name was Susan Ainsley. I can't remember her first name, but they worked on that and they studied moms and kids too. And it was kind of an overlap with Winnicott's work. And it's really interesting because I'm sure you've heard, and all young moms have heard the talk about attachment parenting, what that really means. And, and it looks like we've seen the magazine covers and things that, until the child says differently, it's almost like you continue to mother your child the same way you mothered them in their first days after birth, to a degree, right? You nurse them forever until they say they don't want to. You pick them up and carry them places, even if they're 5. it's gone to those ridiculous lengths, the idea of what attachment parenting means. You cannot be separated from your child because that'll be disruptive for them. Well, that Bowlby never, ever said that, and didn't think, would never have encouraged that. But that's just an example of how things can get sort of like, people understand a piece of something, and then it combines with maybe some fears that they have on other areas. So like, you've got a fear about doing it right. You're one of these moms at, roughly your age kind of thing. And you've got this overwhelming pressure that you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to know how to be a perfect mom. And then you got these two colliding ideas here. And so before you know it, you're like carrying your 6-year-old around and have never been out on a date without them, And I mean, essentially, Bowlby's message was the same. He studied, and Ainsley studied children, and they came up with 4 different scenarios. They could be like secure attached, anxious attachment, distance attachment. I'm not sure what the other one is, but like that sort of thing.
Is it avoidant attachment?
Yeah, avoidant. Yeah, right. And it was Ainsley who did what she called the strange situation experiment. And that was the one where the mom and the child came in, and then the mom would leave for a while. And then when the mom came back, they'd observe. And that sort of could tell them a little bit about what the connection was between the mom and the child. Because some kids were, like they'd go back to their mom. It's like, hi, mom, you're back. That's nice. And others, it was like, they were nervous when she was gone, but when she was back, they didn't want to engage. Fascinating experiment if you ever want to look into it, But I mean, there we go. So there are moms your age, your generation or generation and a half or whatever, who have like both Winnicott and Bowlby as really serious, strong foundational research that's telling you, just be good enough. You just need to be good enough. And here's what it means. Offer your child the safety and connection that they require for where they are in their life, and give them the opportunity to fail, and give them the opportunity to see you fail. And by fail right here, I mean, like, mom doesn't come right away when I start to cry. That doesn't mean she doesn't care about me. It just means she is a separate person than I am. And now she's here, and now we'll work together so I feel better, right? So it's that sort of thing. And it's also encouraging and supportive and calming for moms. And yet it's somehow all of that gets lost in this other talk about, this, you can be everything, you can be anything. And then some sort of a weird twist on attachment theory, So, I mean, questions, comments, like.
Well, I really appreciate that overview, and I really I appreciate this concept of like you tolerably failing your child, right? Because I think that all mothers or parents that level with themselves, know that they have to fail their children, right? Like that if I did what my 6-year-old wanted to do from dawn till dusk, I would be a shell of a human being. Do you know what I mean? Like you just you cannot do that. You have to have boundaries. You have to have, you have to understand yourself as an autonomous being, right? And you also have to understand your child as not simply just this mirror of you or reflection of you, or it's kind of like you talking about your Baptist upbringing. It's like it's all sort of tied up in that same idea that we're like manifesting the future or something. Which makes it kind of complicated for kids to just be then who they are, right? And for women and mothers to just be who they are, right? It's hard to be a parent and be like, my whole life is not her. Because then you're not that you're not, you're just being a good enough mother. You're being a bad mother because your priorities are out of whack, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. And I mean, I think it's difficult too, because, in the very early days with an infant, there's a part of us that knows absolutely that our entire life at that moment is about them,
Yes.
you know, and that can be so frightening because especially the first time, you know, if it's your first child or your only child, because the feeling is so strong and it's like no other drive you've ever had. And you understand it rightly to be the complete like abolishment of you as a separate human. You know, you're functioning only to serve this other being. And when you think, you look at that and you fear that that's what motherhood is, I mean, well, you know, like so many of us have gone down that horrible, horrible, dark place, right? Yeah. And we've talked about how moms, nobody tells moms that that's what's happening. And it's okay to have those thoughts. And it doesn't last, right?
Right.
But yeah, and then that immediately in those tender, tender days, right? When we're so fragile and delicate in our feelings and everything, we're already starting to like doubt ourselves and judge ourselves. You know, how dare I not want to do this for my child? How dare I not want to be a mom? You know, well, you do want to be a mom. You just, you know, like this is not going to last, right? And I think that in those early days and weeks, it's so important for moms to get that message from other loving moms, you know, that this isn't going to last. This is a short-term mammalian response, you know, and it'll pass. And this is not what parenting and mothering is. You are your real self still, you know.
Yeah.
But that's so difficult. I know. And I mean, we could talk all day about that, right?
We really could. And the only thing I wanted to add to that was that was one of the things that I think you articulated it perfectly, because that was one of the things that terrified me the most. I was like, this is it. Like, this is what how I have to spend my life now. And I felt like it was such a big like hoax or something. I was like, how is this possible that like I'm gonna have to serve this infant for the rest of my life, because you're really in it at that moment, right? Like this is she's never gonna grow up, this is never gonna change, you know? And no one tells you that you're gonna be like chained to this. Like it was the incessantness of it that really sort of contributed to my rabbit hole and to my depression, because I was like, if there's no way out, then what do I do? You know?
Yeah. And then I think moms will, the idea comes into your head that you have to choose one or the other opposite pole. You can either completely give yourself to this new reality and, you know, put all of your own needs aside forever for the next however many years, or you can kind of forcibly separate yourself from this child in some emotional sense, still raise them, still be a mom, but not allow yourself to have like, you know, the feelings of that you do have as a parent, the feelings of intense closeness. And, you know, like Tina Fey said once, that being a parent is like having a crush on somebody in your workplace, but you like them better than they like you, you know? So it's all about like, you know, oh, did she smiled at me. I'm sure she did. Oh, she really liked it when I did that. Oh, you know,
I love that.
So there's so many parts where it can be so difficult, you know. We do need people to help us through.
Yes, we absolutely do. And that's why I appreciate your wisdom and insight and compassion on Mummy Voices so much, because honestly, people just, you know, mothers, women, we need to be heard. We need to be able to say the things. We need to be able to laugh at the things. We need to be able to have the dark humor about the things, you know? I'm just so grateful for your presence and experience there.
Oh, thanks. Well, I love you, Jackie. You're so good at what you do.
Oh, stop it. So are you.
No, I mean, you know, Mummy Voices is a very different kind of space for moms. It's not like so many of the others. And a lot of the moms have mentioned that. And it's because, like you say, you know, it's okay to say the hard things. And it's okay to, and we help each other understand that we can have two separate feelings about something, and we don't have to pick one. We just acknowledge that we have them both, you know? Yeah.
I'd love to end on your absolute sort of best advice for moms, for maybe younger moms, these moms that you're sort of,
Mhm.
talking about when you're talking about being good enough and just that being enough.
Okay. Two things. First of all, I'm going to tell you what my doctor told me when I had my first baby. And as I said, I was very, very young. And he said to me when I was going to go home from the hospital, he said, I want you to remember that this child only knows you. They don't know what babies are wearing nowadays. They don't know what any other mom is doing. They don't know what the world is like. All they know right now is you. And for the next little while, that's enough. So you just be you with her and let her be her with you, and you'll get through it, you know? So, I mean, that wasn't another mom sharing anything, but for some reason that really stuck with me, and it really encouraged me and helped me when I had those feelings, because I was very much alone in those days. So there's that. So it's important to remember that your baby does not care what kind of stroller it has, or even whether you carry it around. It doesn't matter. Okay. All your baby cares about is what kind of vibe. I hate to use that word because I am a boomer, so I'm a hippie, but it's an old word, but the sense of what it's getting from you. Okay. Is it getting kind of a calm, secure feeling? Or is it getting kind of a terrified, you know, nobody's in charge feeling, you know? And it's perfectly okay to be calm because it's just the two of you, you know? And the other thing I often say to young moms is like, you can trust yourself. That's almost too hard for young moms. They almost can't take that. But it's true, you know, trust yourself to instinctively know what's right and know that it's all going to change. And then the other thing is find another mom who will tell you the truth. That's really important. So many moms are alone.
Yeah.
And that's the worst for us all.
I appreciate all of that advice now and
Okay.
then and always. So thank you so
Thanks.
much, Cynthia. Thank you for being so wonderful. Thank you
Oh,
for doing this. And thank you for helping Abby and us and I on Mommy Voices.
thank you very much, Jackie. Love you so much. I
Love
hope you have a great weekend.
you too.
Bye-bye.